In a previous word for the church, I quoted from 1 Corinthians, how the Apostle Paul talks about how he, as a master builder, laid the foundation to the church there, and how that is how a church is established and it grows. And then he said in that same passage, and I quote, "Let each one take heed how he builds on it, for no other foundation can be laid than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ." Let each one take heed how he builds. He's using the analogy or the illustration of a building. If you're putting up a steel structure, then you can't have one wall in cardboard. You got to follow the design that's there by the architect and by the general contractor. And the book of Hebrews talks about that building, the local church, on the pattern that God has shown us. And so here I've founded a number of churches, and the center of this is the Toronto Celebration Church, and we have a beautiful church established on the revelation of Jesus Christ. But once in a while, you will have workers that come with fake building material, fake spirituality. Recently, I started to hear one of these fake building planks. It was by those who, I think they consider themselves wanting revival or crying out, God is going to do something, and they want the pastor to be more tough. And so they started to say, we need to expose sin. We need to expose sin. It was like a desperate cry. Like if we could only expose sin, then God would move. That's what's wrong. We don't expose sin. And I said, that's right. We don't expose sin, we deal with sin. This is a very fleshly, religious expression. We want to expose sin, taking some delight in showing the failures of others, showing, oh, look here, I found some sin. This is religious carnality. I remind you what the Apostle Peter said. Above all things, have fervent love for one another, for love will cover, or love covers, a multitude of sins. So I said, we don't expose sin, we deal with sin. And so pastors, and a word to the church and church members, yes, sometimes there is a sin that needs to be dealt with. You take someone privately, talk to them, listen to them, and ministry God's grace to restore such a one. Galatians tells us that you are a spiritual, not carnal, you are spiritual, you can restore. A carnal religious people cannot restore because their natural bent is towards condescension and judgment. And so sin is dealt with, but that will be in a private conversation. Most of all, the blood of Jesus cleanses us from all sin. So we are walking in fellowship with Jesus, and it's not discussed, but if something goes wrong, you get back to Jesus. But then once in a while, there is something that spreads and becomes large. You don't even know how large it is. And then it must be exposed and dealt with. And I have done that together with Pastor Nathan, for example, in the Toronto Celebration Church. We exposed what we needed to expose. And usually we don't expose it. We don't expose anything. It exposes itself. It jumps up at you, and you have to deal with it. So remember, love covers a multitude of sins. We don't expose sin. We deal with it by the blood of Jesus and by the Spirit of God.